In the quiet village of Maplewood, nestled among rolling green hills and cobblestone streets, lived a young woman named Rachel Harper. At 28, Rachel carried the weight of a childhood marked by loss and confinement, yet beneath her composed exterior was a spirit yearning for freedom and love. Rachel's parents had died when she was very young, leaving her in the care of her uncle Thomas Harper, a stern man who raised her alongside his 3 sons, James, Henry, and William. The boys were only a few years older than Rachel, and to outsiders, their household seemed like a close-knit family. Yet, despite the outward harmony, Rachel's world was a cage she hadn't yet found the key to unlock. Growing up, Rachel never experienced any cruelty from her uncle or cousins. Thomas provided food, clothes, and shelter, and often ensured the children shared everything equally, even better sometimes than Rachel herself. Education, however, was a different story. Unlike many girls her age, Rachel had never attended school. Thomas insisted that learning was a luxury she didn't need, a decision that left Rachel both frustrated and invisible in the outside world. As Rachel blossomed into a striking young woman, her delicate features framed by chestnut hair, her clear green eyes always observing, suitors began to arrive at the Harper residence. The village gossips whispered about her beauty, and many hoped to win her hand. But each proposal was met with a cold refusal from Thomas, who never gave Rachel or anyone else a reason. One afternoon, while Rachel was folding freshly laundered linens in the sunlit kitchen, she overheard a conversation between her uncle and one of the suitors. "She'll marry one of my sons," Thomas declared with unwavering certainty. "No outsider will take her away from this family." The words stung Rachel like the sharpest winter frost. She had dreamed of love, a home of her own, a life beyond the narrow walls of the Harper estate. But her uncle's decision was final. Determined to understand her fate, Rachel confronted Thomas that evening, the fading light casting long shadows across the old oak dining table. "Why won't you let me marry someone I choose?" she asked, her voice trembling but resolute. "You never sent me to school, never gave me a chance to live my own life. And now you say I must marry one of your sons." Thomas's eyes darkened. "Because it's for your own good. You belong here with family. No stranger will take you away." Rachel swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. "I don't want to marry any of them. They're like brothers to me." "Then you won't marry at all," Thomas said, closing the door on her plea. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Rachel's cousins, especially James, who was closest in age, tried to comfort her. James was a tall, broad-shouldered young man with a mischievous grin that often softened the harshness of their home. "Don't worry, Rachel," he said one evening, handing her a glass of homemade lemonade. "I'm not trying to make you marry me. I just want you to be happy." Rachel smiled faintly, touched by his kindness. But the weight of her situation pressed down harder each day. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, James slipped into Rachel's room with a nervous energy. "I know you don't love me," he whispered, "but I want us to find a way out of this. I'll talk to my dad, see if he'll let you meet other men. Maybe you'll find someone you truly love." Rachel's heart fluttered with hope. "Do you really think he'd agree?" James shrugged. "I'll try. For you." But when the next suitor came, a young man from a neighboring village, Thomas shut the door before Rachel could even say hello. "No outsiders," he reminded her coldly. Rachel's dreams began to fray at the edges. She felt trapped between loyalty and desire, between the family she had and the life she wanted. Then one afternoon, James returned to her room with a mischievous smile and a bottle of raspberry soda. "I've got a plan," he said, "but you have to trust me." Before Rachel could ask what he meant, she found herself waking the next morning with a pounding headache and a vague sense of confusion. The details were fuzzy, but James was at her side, apologizing profusely. "I only wanted to help," he said. "To make Dad see you deserve a choice." Rachel's cheeks burned with embarrassment and anger. "James, that's not how you do things." "I know," he muttered, "but I'm trying." What followed was a tangled web of secrets and half-truths. James showed Rachel a video he had taken, a recording of their conversation and the moments that had passed between them. "This is proof that you're not just some possession," he said. "We can use this to make Dad back off." Rachel's heart raced. The thought of her private moments being shared like currency was terrifying, yet it was the only weapon she had. But then James shocked her further. "I was joking about marrying you," he said. "I don't want to marry anyone. We're stuck with each other anyway." Rachel's mind reeled. Stuck? With the Harper family? Forever? Worse still, the video had been seen by Henry and William, her other cousins, who now looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and something darker. The fragile bonds that had held their family together began to unravel. Rachel found herself silenced, caught in a storm she didn't understand, forced to accept the impossible. Yet, beneath the surface of despair, a flicker of rebellion burned. Rachel knew she couldn't live like this forever. Somewhere beyond Maplewood, a life awaited her. One she had to fight for as the sun set over the village, casting long shadows across the Harper estate. Rachel's phone buzzed with an unknown number. A message appeared. Asterisk, we need to talk. There's more to this than you know. Asterisk, a chill ran down her spine. The mystery had only just begun. The chill of the late autumn evening seeped through the thin curtains of Rachel's small bedroom, settling over her like a silent specter. Outside, the village of Maplewood was winding down. Shop windows darkening, street lamps flickering to life, and the distant bark of a dog echoing through the quiet lanes. But inside the Harper household, tension simmered beneath the surface like a pot left to boil over. Rachel stared at her phone, the glowing screen illuminating the words that had appeared just moments ago. Asterisk, we need to talk. There's more to this than you know. Asterisk, the message was unsigned, mysterious, and utterly unsettling. Who could it be? And what more could there possibly be? She pressed her lips together, biting back a sigh. The last few weeks had been a roller coaster ride of confusion, humiliation, and forced compliance. James's reckless plan with the video had backfired spectacularly, turning her once peaceful home into a cage lined with suspicion and silent judgments. Henry and William's glances had grown colder, their conversations abruptly ceasing when she entered the room. Even Thomas, her uncle and captor in the guise of a guardian, had grown more distant, his once firm control now tinged with an unspoken threat. That Rachel's fingers hovered over the screen as she debated whether to reply. Curiosity battled with fear, but in the end, her desire for answers tipped the scale. She typed, asterisk, who is this? What do you mean? Asterisk, and hit send. The reply came almost instantly. Asterisk, meet me at the old chapel ruins at midnight. Alone. Asterisk, Rachel's heart skipped a beat. The chapel ruins were a place whispered about in Maplewood. Ancient, crumbling stones covered in ivy, where the townsfolk said spirits lingered and secrets hid in the shadows. It wasn't a place for casual meetings, and certainly not alone at night. But if this was her chance to uncover the truth, she had no choice. She glanced around her room, her eyes resting on the modest yet carefully arranged belongings that defined her life. A faded floral dress hanging on the door, her worn leather boots tucked beneath the bed, a delicate silver locket resting on the bedside table. The locket, a keepsake from her late mother, was the only piece of jewelry she allowed herself, a subtle glint against her pale skin, hinting at a vulnerability she rarely showed. Rachel slipped quietly from her bed, careful not to wake the household. She dressed swiftly in dark jeans and a snug black sweater, her long hair pulled back into a loose braid to avoid snagging on the thorny bushes she might have to pass through. She tucked the locket beneath her sweater, a talisman for courage, and stepped into her boots. The night air was crisp and biting as she slipped through the back gate of the Harper estate, the gravel crunching softly beneath her feet. The village was asleep, save for the occasional flicker of candlelight behind drawn curtains. Rachel's breath formed small clouds in the cold, but she pressed on, her mind racing with questions and fears. The path to the chapel ruins was overgrown and treacherous, but Rachel knew it well from childhood explorations before the shadows of her family's control had fallen so heavily. As she approached the moss-covered stones, a figure stepped out of the darkness, a man slender and tall, with a hood drawn low over his face. Rachel, he said softly, his voice a whisper against the night. I'm sorry to scare you. She studied him closely. His eyes, bright and sharp, held a mixture of urgency and sympathy. Who are you? How do you know about me? My name's Luke, he replied, and I used to know your father. Rachel's heart stuttered. Her father, a man she barely remembered, shrouded in the fog of her early childhood, was suddenly a thread pulling her into a tapestry she didn't understand. Luke stepped closer, lowering his hood. His features were weathered but kind, the deep lines around his eyes telling stories of hardship and survival. Your uncle Thomas, he's not who you think he is. There are things about your family, secrets buried long before you were born. Rachel swallowed hard. What kind of secrets? Luke glanced over his shoulder nervously, then back at her. Your parents didn't just die in an accident, Rachel. There was more, something your uncle wanted to hide. I'm here to help you find out the truth, but you have to trust me. The air between them seemed to hum with tension. Rachel's mind reeled. Was this a trap? A cruel joke? Or the key to breaking free from the chains that bound her? She took a tentative step forward. If what you say is true, then I need to know everything. Luke nodded solemnly. Then let's begin. But first, he added with a wry smile, you should probably stop calling your Uncle Thomas the Terrible. I'm pretty sure he's been trying for years to earn that nickname. Rachel couldn't help but laugh, the sound fragile but genuine in the cold night. For the first time in years, a spark of hope flickered in her chest as they disappeared into the shadows beyond the chapel ruins. The moon cast a pale light over the village, illuminating the path toward a truth that would shake Maplewood to its core. But somewhere in the darkness, eyes watched silently, and a whisper carried on the wind. Asterisk, she must not learn the past. Some secrets are better left buried. Asterisk. The chill that clung to the night air seemed to deepen as Rachel followed Luke away from the chapel ruins, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of fallen leaves. The village of Maplewood, with its quaint cottages and flickering lamplights, lay behind them, a world of shadows and half-truths Rachel was desperate to leave behind. Luke led her along a narrow dirt path winding through the ancient forest that bordered the village. Towering oaks and whispering pines loomed overhead, their branches knitting together like skeletal fingers against the silver moonlight. The scent of damp earth and moss filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of pine resin. It was a place where time seemed to slow, where secrets nestled beneath the roots and whispered in the rustling leaves. So Rachel began, breaking the silence. You said you knew my father. How? And what do you mean about my uncle? Luke glanced at her, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. Your father and I grew up in this area, back before Maplewood was the peaceful village it is today. We were close, like brothers, really. But things changed when your mother died. Rachel's heart tightened. Her mother's death had always been a blank space in her memory, a story told in hushed tones, careful to avoid the painful details. What happened to her? Luke hesitated. She was ill, yes, but there were complications. And your Uncle Thomas was involved more than anyone knew. He's been protecting a lie all these years. Rachel's fingers curled into fists. Protecting a lie? Why? What lies? Luke stopped abruptly, turning to face her under the canopy of stars. Because if the truth came out, it would destroy everything. Your family, this village, even your own future. Rachel swallowed. Then why tell me now? Why risk everything? Because you deserve the truth, Luke said firmly. And because someone doesn't want you to have it. A sudden rustling in the bushes made Rachel jump. She squinted into the darkness, heart pounding. Did you hear that? Luke's eyes narrowed. You're not alone out here. From the shadows emerged a figure, a woman tall and graceful, her dark hair cascading over a leather jacket that gleamed faintly in the moonlight. She moved with the confidence of someone used to being in control, her gaze sharp and unyielding. Luke, she said coolly, I was wondering when you'd show up. Rachel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. The woman's eyes locked onto hers, assessing, calculating. This is Evelyn, Luke introduced, someone who knows more than she lets on. Evelyn smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Rachel, you've been living a sheltered life. Your uncle has done his best to keep you in the dark, but the past has a way of catching up. Rachel bristled. What do you want? Evelyn's smile widened, a flash of something dangerous flickering across her face. I'm here to offer you a choice. Keep living in the shadow of the Harper family, or step into the light and uncover what they've been hiding. Rachel's mind raced. The warmth of hope battled with the cold grip of fear. Could she trust these strangers? Was the truth worth the risk? Before she could answer, a sudden noise shattered the tense calm. A branch snapped, followed by hurried footsteps. From the darkness emerged James, his face pale and strained, eyes darting nervously between the three. Rachel, he gasped, you shouldn't be here. It's not safe. Rachel's gaze hardened. James, I'm done hiding. He looked at Luke and Evelyn, suspicion flickering. Who are these people? They're here to help, Rachel said firmly. James hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. All right. But we need to move now. Without another word, the four of them plunged deeper into the forest, shadows swallowing their forms as unseen eyes tracked their every move as they vanished into the night. A cold wind whispered through the trees, carrying a warning that chilled Rachel to her core. Asterisk, some truths will cost you everything. Are you ready to pay the price? Asterisk. The forest closed around them like a living wall, the thick canopy blotting out the stars and moonlight, plunging Rachel and her unlikely companions into near darkness. The crunch of leaves beneath their feet was the only sound breaking the heavy silence, each step carrying them further from the safety of Maplewood and deeper into a tangled web of secrets and danger. That Rachel's heart pounded in her chest, the adrenaline from the sudden escape mingling with a growing sense of unease. She glanced at Luke, whose steady presence was both reassuring and mysterious. His dark eyes scanned the shadows ahead, alert to every rustle and whisper. Evelyn, trailing just behind, moved with the grace of a predator, her leather jacket catching what little light filtered through the trees, and her gaze as sharp and cold as a blade. James, the youngest of the group, struggled to keep pace, his breaths coming in short gasps. His usual mischievous grin was nowhere to be seen. Instead, he wore the weight of worry like a second skin. Where exactly are we going? Rachel asked quietly, careful not to break the fragile calm. To a safe place, Luke replied without turning. Somewhere we can talk without fear of being overheard. His voice was low, barely above a whisper, but firm enough to command attention. Rachel swallowed, trying to steady her trembling hands. The chill in the air was more than just the cold. It was the invisible touch of danger that seemed to cling to every corner of their journey. She couldn't help but think of all the times she'd felt trapped in the Harper household, controlled and silenced. Now, stepping into the unknown, she wondered if freedom was worth the price. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small clearing bathed in the pale glow of a single lantern hanging from a gnarled tree branch. Beneath it stood an old wooden cabin, its weathered exterior blending seamlessly with the forest. The windows were dark, but a faint plume of smoke curled from the chimney, promising warmth and shelter. Luke pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside, motioning for the others to follow. The cabin was modest but cozy, with rough-hewn furniture and a stone fireplace crackling softly. The scent of pine and burning wood filled the air, mingling with the faint hint of herbs drying from the ceiling beams. Rachel sank into a worn armchair, the leather cracked and softened by years of use. James flopped onto a nearby bench, running a hand through his tousled hair, while Evelyn leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching Rachel with an unreadable expression. Luke pulled out a small, weathered notebook from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table. We don't have much time, he said, his tone serious. There are things you need to know, things about your family, your parents, and why your uncle has kept you isolated all these years. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Start talking. Luke nodded, flipping open the notebook. Your father, Michael Harper, was part of a group, people who wanted to expose corruption in Maplewood. He uncovered things that certain powerful people wanted buried. Your uncle Thomas was involved, but not in the way you think. He was trying to protect you. Rachel's breath caught. Protect me? From what? From the truth, Luke said grimly. Thomas made sacrifices to keep you safe, but those sacrifices came at a cost. Your mother's death wasn't an accident, and your father's disappearance wasn't just him leaving. They were caught in something much bigger. A conspiracy that threatens to unravel everything. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice steady. That's why you've been kept here, away from school, away from strangers. To keep you from discovering what your parents found out. Rachel clenched her fists. And my cousins? James, Henry, William? Were they part of this too? Luke shook his head. They're pawns in this game, caught between loyalty and fear. But there's something else, something you need to see. From his jacket, Luke withdrew a small flash drive and handed it to Rachel. This contains evidence your father gathered. Documents, recordings, proof of the corruption. If you want to fight for your freedom, you'll need this. Rachel stared at the device, the weight of it heavy in her palm. And if I refuse? Evelyn's eyes gleamed. Then you'll remain a prisoner of your uncle, your family, and the past. The fire crackled, shadows dancing across the walls as Rachel sat back, the enormity of the choice before her settling like a stone in her stomach. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying a distant scream that echoed through the night. And from the darkness beyond the cabin, unseen eyes watched, waiting. The game had just begun. The cabin's worn wooden floorboards creaked softly beneath Rachel's shifting weight as she sat in the armchair, the small flash drive heavy in her palm like a ticking time bomb. The flickering firelight cast long, dancing shadows across the rough-hewn walls, turning the cozy room into a stage for secrets long buried and truths waiting to explode. Luke and Evelyn exchanged a glance, their faces etched with tension, while James sat slumped on the bench, eyes wide and restless like a caged animal. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant hoot of an owl. Rachel's mind raced. The revelations Luke had just dropped on her felt like a slap in the face. Her whole life, carefully constructed and controlled, was built on lies and half-truths. Her parents weren't gone by chance. Her uncle wasn't the benevolent guardian she believed him to be, but a man tangled in shadows too dark to escape. And now she held the key to a conspiracy that could topple the fragile piece of Maplewood. Her fingers tightened around the flash drive, knuckles whitening. Why show me this now? Why risk everything? Luke's eyes darkened. Because your uncle's patience is wearing thin. He's already started moving against those who ask questions. You're not safe in Maplewood anymore. Especially not with him. Evelyn stepped closer, her boots thudding softly on the wooden floor. There are people watching, Rachel. People who want to keep this buried. If you don't act fast, you'll lose any chance at freedom. Rachel swallowed hard, the weight of fear and determination settling into a strange mix inside her. And my cousins? What about James? He seemed conflicted. James looked up sharply, fingers twitching nervously. I didn't want you to get hurt. I thought if I kept quiet things would just go back to normal. But they're not normal anymore. Not for any of us. Rachel's gaze softened, but she couldn't let sentiment cloud her judgment. I'm not your sister, James. I can't keep living like I'm part of this family. This prison. Luke nodded approvingly. Exactly. You need to take control. Use this evidence to expose the truth. But it won't be easy. Your uncle has allies, people with power and influence who won't hesitate to silence you. Rachel felt a cold shiver trace her spine. So what now? Where do I start? Evelyn produced a folded piece of paper from inside her jacket and laid it on the table. The ink was smudged, but the handwriting was unmistakable. An address in the nearby town of Ashford. A place Rachel had never heard of. That's where you'll find someone who can help, Evelyn said. A journalist who's been investigating the same corruption your father uncovered. But be careful. Trust no one. Rachel folded the paper carefully, tucking it into her pocket. The room seemed to close in around her, the flickering shadows suddenly more menacing. As she rose to leave, James stepped forward, his voice low. Rachel, whatever you decide, you're not alone. We all want you to be free. She looked at him, searching for the brother she never had, but all she saw was a boy trapped in the same nightmare outside. The wind battered the cabin, rattling windows and sending a flurry of dead leaves swirling. Rachel pulled her jacket tighter, the weight of the night pressing down. Just as she stepped into the darkness, her phone buzzed. An incoming message from an unknown number. Asterisk, they're closer than you think. Watch your back. Asterisk. Rachel's breath caught. Somewhere in the shadows, eyes gleamed with cruel anticipation. The fight for her freedom had only just begun.